I've been doing a lot of thinking about how sad and unfair my life has been, all because girls haven't been attracted to me. I've been going through college for 2.5 years now, and in those 2.5 years, I've had to rot in bleak and sad loneliness, while other guys get to enjoy all the pleasures of.
On May the 23rd, 2014, 22-year-old Elliot Rodgers carried out a killing spree in Isla Vista, California, killing 7 people and injuring 13 others. Many were UC Santa Barbara students, people who were getting a good education and had futures ahead of them. His motive was revenge for alleged social and sexual rejection. Elliot Rodgers was a very privileged and spoiled kid who happened to be the son of the assistant director of the Hunger Games, Peter Rodgers. His family was very wealthy. Elliot Rodgers had a BMW and expensive clothes paid with his parents' money. Elliot was unemployed and throughout his life only had one job, cleaning at a public facility that he quit after the first day, believing that it was beneath him. His mother was providing him with an apartment in Santa Barbara County, away from his home in the Los Angeles area. He was not a university student. Elliot went to community colleges where he constantly dropped his classes, often because of his jealousy at seeing couples together. Rodgers added classes only to drop them later, to fool his parents into thinking that he was going to school in Santa Barbara, when his real reason was to pursue girls. His parents and many of the people around him are wondering why this spoiled, self-entitled brat went on this rampage, in what he called a day of retribution. He uploaded a series of videos about his sexual frustration on a YouTube account in the months leading up to the attack. He had videos with titles similar to "Why Do Girls Hate Me?", in which he rants on and on about petty nonsense about his life that he describes as a living hell. He literally says that his anger and misery is, quote, "all because girls are not attracted to me," unquote. Elliot Rodgers is one ridiculous, incredibly delusional kid. There are people who are struggling to survive every day, people who are fighting cancer, people who are denied opportunities to move ahead with their lives, people who are struggling just to get a bite to eat every day. This kid is so ridiculous and has an extremely strange perception of reality. He is so self-entitled that he thinks just because everyone around him doesn't give him everything he wants means that he has a difficult life. This kid wrote a 144-page memoir that he titled My Twisted World, which he emailed to his parents and psychologists right before he carried out his attack. Now he calls this his manifesto, which is hardly even a manifesto. There's very little ideological stuff in it. I wouldn't even call it ideological. He has a lot of extremely stupid opinions. My Twisted World is basically his entire life story, in which he desperately tries to portray himself as a tragic character. He details the causes for his sexual frustration and anger at people, which is almost entirely because of the fact that girls were not attracted to him. He writes about how he dresses nice to attract girls, and when no girls notice him or walk around with their boyfriends, he becomes filled with rage. His anger makes him wish to kill. His anger makes him wish to kill and torture girls for not worshipping him and the males they are attracted to for taking away the girls he wishes to pursue. This Elliot is clearly insane. He is completely removed from reality. This way of thinking can only be described as infantile. This memoir is actually uploaded on YouTube in the form of an audiobook. It is about 10 hours long. I listened to the entire thing. If you read or listen to the audiobook of his memoir, you can see Elliot Rodger getting more and more ridiculous and delusional as you move through the diary. He, for some months, spends hundreds of dollars on lotteries, attempts to get rich and attract girls. He makes more than one trip to Arizona to spend money on lotteries that he gets nothing out of. He gets emotional whenever he finds out he does not win. I'm not sure if some of the stories he describes are fictionalized or not. He's just incredibly delusional. It's ridiculous. There is one story he describes at a coffee shop where he spots a girl with an allegedly obnoxious looking guy with sagging pants. This sight fills him full of envy. He stalks them outside and pours his latte on them and quickly gets in his car to speed away. This was considered to be a revenge against his enemies who mistreated him and condemned him to suffering. He writes about how he wishes to inflict suffering on the couples by torturing and killing them. The males, he says, deserve to be skinned alive for taking away his girls. He describes how he often fantasizes about entering the rooms of couples and stabbing them to death while they are having sex. Seeing males being more successful with girls to him was an insult. This kid is clearly mentally ill. His way of thinking is incomprehensible to a normal person. No one can sympathize with this brain-dead, insane, violent degenerate. He's like a terribly spoiled child, hating everyone for not treating him like he's special when he's not. This way of thinking is outrageous. Elliot even wrote that he will always resent his mother for not getting a rich husband to raise Elliot's prestige, that she is selfish for not carrying out his commands. It's difficult to tell if he is joking. The most moronic idiot on the planet confirmed. Elliot Rodgers actually had one friend named James, who he met in elementary school. They liked to kick dust together in first grade. James and Elliot Rodgers have been meeting up regularly and playing online games ever since. There came a day when even he could not take him anymore. James became deeply disturbed when Elliot told James his dreams of torturing couples and hearing them scream in agony for revenge. Enough was enough. As James was someone Rodgers described as being understanding of how he felt. One time when they were eating at a fast food restaurant and saw a couple look at them in an arrogant manner, James stopped and enraged Elliot from splashing his soft drink on them by suggesting they go home. Eventually, even James could not take his arrogance, self-entitlement, and ridiculousness anymore. He spoke to Elliot coldly on the World of Warcraft and ended up having an argument with him that ended their friendship. Elliot was told to keep his proximity when he inquired about why he didn't want to talk to him anymore during a friend and family gathering on Thanksgiving, as described in his diary. Elliot Rodger was one pathetic, emotional crybaby. He often cried and called his parents while crying about girls not liking him. I wonder if he ever made an actual attempt to make friends with females. When he describes what he does in detail to get a female, all he writes is that he smiles at them and greets them casually with highs and hellos, only to be ignored. He writes, "I was a starving man sitting in front of a feast I was prohibited to eat." Elliot tries to dress nice and expects girls just to flock to him. No one can sympathize with this guy. Was he expecting to gain support by writing this so-called manifesto? He has terribly twisted logic and has this attitude that everyone should give him what he wants without giving anything back. He doesn't have a basic understanding on norms and communication skills. If you want something, you can't just demand it. If he wanted a girlfriend or a friend, no one's just going to walk up to him and give him the admiration he desires. Elliot had a perception of reality that makes no sense to everyone but himself. If you listen to the audiobook on YouTube or make it towards the last quarter of the book, he will get pretty silly and outrageous. I'll tell you about some of the nutty stories I found. He writes that one day in his car at a red light, when he smiled at two girls waiting at a bus stop, they ignored him. This provoked him to make a U-turn and spray his hot coffee all over them. He quickly sped away before any spot of the girls or bystanders got the chance to see his license plate. He says they deserve to be boiled in hot water. In his other story, Elliot Rodgers goes on a stroll in the park and he uses his super soaker water gun to spray orange juice at attractive girls playing with their male friends. He quickly gets into his car and drives away. He says he wished he could spray boiling oils at them and make them suffer horrible deaths. When his frustration peaks, he decides that girls are mentally wrong for not being attracted to him, despite the fact that he hardly made a real effort to talk to them. This guy is incredibly selfish, sick-minded. He's a brain-dead degenerate who needed to be put in a mental hospital. Finally, he plans his day of retribution, his war against women and humanity for not worshipping and serving him. He writes that he will give humanity one last chance before he carries out this day of retribution. If humanity gives him what he wants, he will not move forward with his plans. He goes to a party where he once again makes no real effort to socialize with girls. All he does is get angry when people are not attracted to him, never saying anything except insults towards people he is envious of. Elliot Rodgers insults an Asian guy just because of the fact he managed to talk to a girl, particularly a white girl that he was attracted to. I'd like to point out some of the racist attitudes that he expresses throughout the memoir. Elliot Rodgers expressed that he felt that white girls, the only girls that he was attracted to, looked down on him because he was biracial. He was half white and half Asian. When he first moved to Santa Barbara, he wrote about his envy towards a black roommate who told him that he had sex with a blonde white girl at age 13. Elliot Rodgers broke down crying and wrote that he could not believe a descendant of slaves could get a blonde white girl instead of him. He was a, quote, descendant of British aristocracy, unquote. This kid is a combination of the worst characteristics of humanity. He is self-entitled, arrogant, and unlikable in every way. He has racist attitudes towards Asians and blacks, it seems. Maybe he thought this Asian kid was ugly because of his race, or maybe he thought he was just an ugly person with stereotypically ugly features. Later on in the party, he moves to a ledge where he confronts a group of allegedly obnoxious boys. He sees a group of attractive girls walk over to the group of boys he despised so much. These girls end up socializing with these obnoxious boys. At this particular part of the story, I can begin to see his point about how unfair people can be to him. I can see his angle a little bit. His way of thinking is illogical, but I can tell what he is seeing is girls flocking to unattractive, obnoxious people instead of supreme gentleman like him. The girls socialized with the obnoxious boys and completely neglected him. Elliot saw this as illogical and an insult to him, so in a rage, he insulted them all and tried to push as many of the boys and girls off the ledge. He targeted the boys for their luck and the girls for not talking to him. The boys ended up pushing him off the ledge instead. Elliot landed on the ground where he broke his ankle. When he searched for the party to get his $300 sunglasses that he left behind, he ends up getting beaten up. He's covered in bruises as his leg ends up broken. The fight is eventually broken up by Good Samaritans who, for a very short period of time, help him to get up and be on his way home. Rodgers describes his injuries and complains about the response he received, and about no girls wanting to help him get home and sleep with him. It is amazing how delusional he is to think the whole world revolves around him. Elliot Rodgers said he gave humanity one last chance, and they blew it back at him. This kid just gets more ridiculous and illogical as he goes on. Elliot Rodgers becomes eager to plan his attack. The memoir details his plans to kill his little brother out of the fear of him having a better life than him, and to kill his stepmother out of the fear of her stopping him. Elliot, on a regular basis, made trips back to his home where he would see his little brother, Jazz, becoming much more socially active than he was. There was a fear of him having a better social life than him. It's just so insane how self-entitled he is. He starts a fight at a party, becomes angry when he gets the response he asks for. How childish is that? He can't stand people, even his own family members, being more successful than he is. It's just pure insanity. There's probably no one on this planet as ridiculous and as self-entitled as this Elliot Rodgers. He even considers killing his father, Peter Rodgers, until it was decided he would have to wait till his father was out of town, because he wouldn't have the guts to do so. The plan of the Day of Retribution is to drive down to his hometown and kill his little brother and stepmother. Then Elliot will drive back to his apartment in Isla Vista, where he will kill his roommates, and lure good-looking people into his house to torture and kill with knives. He plans to pour boiling water on them and behead them. The heads will be taken to his car for later. Then Elliot will drive to what he called the hottest sorority house of all of UCSB to annihilate every single girl he encounters. If Elliot Rodgers has time, he writes that he will set the house on fire. He then will go on a drive-by shooting around the area and dump the severed heads on the streets to terrify the victims' friends. He will fire bullets on a house party to kill as many good-looking people as he can. When he realizes there is nothing left to do but run from pursuing police, he will commit suicide. There is possibly no one with a brain as messed up as Elliot Rodgers. The most ridiculous part of the book is the very end. He writes about how females deserve no rights and how he wishes he could rule the planet to put most women in concentration camps to starve them to death. The few remaining women, he says, will be put in labs for reproduction. Psychologists must wonder how such a spoiled, privileged kid turned into such a freak of nature. Bullying and zero tolerance probably have little to do with Elliot's frustration. Rodgers writes his memoir that he was only bullied a lot in 8th grade and his first year and a half in high school. In 8th grade, he writes, he actually did not mind being bullied much because to him at that time, infamy was better than being invisible. He only spent about a year and a half at regular high school, which was very miserable for him. He was often picked on by kids who were older than him, and he encountered people who had better sex lives than him. The last 2 years of high school, or last 2.5 years, were spent at a special type of school of only about 100 people, in which there was no social life. Elliot would go to school for a few hours a day, work only with the teachers, and go home. This was called Independence High School. I actually have a Independence High School around my area. It's a type of school for kids who do poorly at regular school, so they go to this special type of school where they work mainly with teachers who give them not a lot of work to do. It's a path for bad kids to graduate. Elliot Rodgers' frustration mainly emerged during his community college years, where there was no bullying. Elliot went to parties and special events like the premiere of The Hunger Games, the popular film his father was working on. He got some chances to see his father's elite life. Only one time was he bullied during a party, if I'm not mistaken. On one of his attempts to socialize with people around his age, Rodgers was confronted by a group of young, sporty men who wanted to beat him up. He successfully got to leave him alone when he pulled out his trusty knife. Elliot traveled to Morocco, France, and his home country of England 2 times each. Elliot did not go to a real university. He did not go to a real college. He only went to a 2-year community college. He was unemployed and was basically a parasite leeching off of his parents to cause other people misery. 7 people had to die because of this spoiled, worthless, insane, violent, self-centered waste of life. He is some of the worst humanity has to offer, which has a caring family and access to his father's elite. What a hard life. This kid has no brain. Elliot Rodgers was an incredibly emotional, spoiled, self-entitled crybaby. His parents often took him out to eat, brought him to parties, and even to the premiere of The Hunger Games, as I've said before. I can barely contain my annoyance for this ridiculous kid. He needed to be put in a mental hospital. Looks like this kid had a really tough life. Not. It annoys me beyond measure how pathetic and spoiled this child is. Everyone deserves compassion, but there is no justification for this kid's behavior. People like this needed to be put in mental hospital to get the help they so desperately needed. If there is any hope for such little freaks, he needed to be killed or put in jail to be kept away from society. The fault of the attack lies largely on the police. Elliot Rodgers wrote in his diary that when a group of police showed up at his door asking about his disturbing YouTube videos, they found him to be polite and left him alone after a little interview. If they searched his room, it would have ended everything, he says. Why did the police not bother to search his room? Why did it matter if he seemed polite? This incident is probably a lesson to police, psychologists, and parents to prevent future actions from taking place. Elliot Rodgers' act of forensic folly remains a mystery.